Citizens of football land, welcome back to the Badlands feed. It's Buck the Trend. I'm your host, Dan Essian, and I told you that we would come back with multiple episodes in a short time frame. I also promised you a special guest, and he's here right now. So welcome in Russell Brown to the pod of fantasy pros and betting betting pros, NFL draft analyst, writer for the Lions Wire, host on the Detroit Lions podcast. You've been on radio. You're doing everything out here, man. What's going on?
Oh man, I'm good, man. I appreciate you for bringing me on. Yeah, a lot of different titles there, but just kind of mixing and matching. I kind of did one thing for a long time, so I was like, let me dabble into multiple avenues here and see what happens, and it kind of just took off. So it's working out. But happy to be here. Happy to talk a little Lions, a little Jets, and obviously some NFL draft. I think both of us get into both of that pretty well. So I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, that's one of my favorite follows on the feed for sure, because that was, I think, one of the things that we were connect on in the past was just draft prospects and some of our favorites back then. And since then, I've just been like, man, just watching you grow and watching your career kind of taking off out here. So I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been pretty cool to watch you move out here. So okay, I want to talk about, and I'm glad you got the gear, you got the scratches behind you and everything, bro. It's all set here. So we're talking a little bit of Lions. So of course you're a Lions fan. You write about the Lions. You host a podcast about the Lions. So we're gonna talk about the Jets and Lions because there's definitely some similarities there, and then we're gonna get a little bit into the NFL draft. But I did want to start with that Jets and Lions comparison because, and we're kind of titling this podcast episodes "Bad Teams Turn Good." They're both kind of in a little bit of a renaissance right now. They're in a bit of a good phase. A lot of good things happening for both of these teams, and a lot of similarities, honestly, between their styles and their coaches, for sure. One of the jokes we have on the Badlands team is that it would be great if we got a Jets Lions matchup, maybe at the very end here, and then Robert Saleh and Dan Campbell just fight in that midfield.
that's the game. They just brawl. That would be unreal. Be perfect.
I mean, hey, I think both teams would sign up for that. So,
I love it.
But yeah, there's just like so many cool similarities between them. But yeah, I wanted to get your take on like how this Lions season's been for you, like as like personally as a fan of the team, but also like analyzing the team and seeing players grow and stuff like that. How cool has it been to kind of see them taking off and finally?
I mean it's been interesting, man. It's been something way different than anything I've ever experienced as a fan. I mean, I know there was a run in the 90s, but I was still fairly young, and we kind of talked about that pre-show. We share a birthday, so that's kind of cool. We're like brothers from another mother, literally. But like it's one of those things. Like I don't know how to feel. And when I was part of Cover One, and it's Buffalo Bills centric, a lot of everything that we did was Bills focused, but they kind of paved the way for me to how to like feel, because like I watched their reactions, and the way I feel is exactly how I saw them feeling during that time. So like I go through it and I'm like, they're winning by double digits, and I know they just got torched by the Ravens, but that's a good football team, and every good football team's allowed to lose to another good football team in a bad way sometimes. Like it happens. Yeah. It's just part of the process. But for me, like I don't know, man. It's just so different, and I'm giddy. I'm excited. I'm trying not to drink too much of the Kool-Aid, but at the same time, I'm like 3 or 4 cups deep right now. So like I don't know how to act, but it's exciting, man. A lot of hate to Jared Goff from the fans. Like he's never going to get us over there, and it's like I don't know if you've been watching the last 16, 17 games, man. He's 13-4. He's efficient. He doesn't turn the football over. He gets the ball to everybody in the offense, and he's got great rapport already with Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously.
Yeah.
J-Mo is J-Mo, but we can talk about that. I'm sure we will, but it just feels great, man. It's been fun so far. I'm just hoping that like we get to the bye week and it keeps going this way. It doesn't just collapse, because I've been there. I've seen that. I've seen a 6-2 at the bye, and then we went 2-6 the rest of the way, and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah, Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. And yeah, man, the what you're saying about drinking the Kool-Aid, it's such a tough balance. It's such a tough balance. I've definitely been on both sides of that this year already.
Hmm.
Of like,
Game one, like the first play.
right? You're just like, oh, like this is it. It's finally different. Then you're like, nope, calm down.
We're the
Let's just
Jets.
wait and see. Let's wait and see. We're the Jets exactly. Let's wait and see. Things could be the same.
Right.
Let's just see if we actually turn the corner. And that I think that Eagles game for sure was like the okay. Let's take another sip. Like
Yeah.
let's take another cup. Really, honestly, because it's like man, that it was just such a awesome performance by their defense, and it's just a lot of things that you're hoping the strength of the team would be are starting to look like the real strength and looking like a formidable force. So. But yeah, it's a balance because you know what the weaknesses are, and you know a lot of times when you're like, okay, they actually haven't addressed that,
Right.
and it may pop up again. You just have to monitor. But like, man, I have to say, like, the Jared Goff stuff is like, as a Jets fan, very strange for me because I think when we see Jared Goff, when we watch him play, it's kind of like, damn, man, like. That's nice. I want I like that.
Right.
Like consistency, no turnovers, like
Yeah,
accuracy.
and that's my
That
thing.
sounds
Like
great.
people act like finding a franchise quarterback is so easy to do. And like I don't know if we're like spoiled from the 10, 11 years we had of Matthew Stafford, but like
That's true.
I
Yeah.
remember the 2000s, bro, like Ty Detmer, Mike McMahon, Joey Harrington, Dante Culpepper, John Kitna, Dan Orlovsky. Like the list goes on and on and
Yeah.
on. And it was like Jeff Garcia was here for a minute. It was just bad.
Yes.
It was bad football all the time. And then we got Stafford, and it was good, but he could never win the big game.
Right.
And sure, the defense didn't do him favors at times, but then you make this crazy trade. You get 2 first-round picks, and you get a first overall pick in a quarterback that maybe just needed the change of scenery. And I don't know, through 2 seasons, he looks like a guy that just needed that change. And or 3 seasons, whatever it's been now. But he just looks like that guy. And I'm like, you look around at other teams, like the Broncos aren't going anywhere with Russell Wilson. You look at the Jets, they got Aaron Rodgers, but they're doing the best they can without him right now. And Zach
Exactly.
Wilson's okay, but he's not great. And then you just go down the list of teams that need quarterback help. Like the Commanders are probably going to need one. There's so many. And you're just like, we don't really have that right now. Like I'm pretty happy with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You should be.
Yeah.
It's such a step up because you have consistency. You know what you're gonna you know what to expect, especially from someone who's like he's had enough time in the league that his performances are consistent. You know, and with Zach Wilson, it's like the coaching staff is just like the sky's the limit, but like the floor right now is like please don't turn the ball over. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because the inconsistent play is like you don't know what you're going to get from your offense every week. But with Goff, it's like, nah, you know what you're going to get. So I want to talk about, oh man, there's so many things I want to ask you
Just
about.
dive in, brother.
Okay, I mean, I feel like we both upset the 2023 Super Bowl teams. So y'all upset the Chiefs. The Jets just beat the Eagles. How much do you think you can take from that week 1 performance in terms of what's actually been sustained since then? Because a lot of folks were like, oh, it's just 1 week, and then they kind of sustained a lot of the good things that they showed in that 1 week. So how much of that do you think is the real Lions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, sure, there was some luck there, right? Kadarius Toney dropping a couple passes,
Right.
Sky Moore the same. Chris Jones didn't play and Travis Kelce didn't play, but, they played them tight, and they played their game the way that they've kind of played all year. Like they won, I don't want to say in a convincing way, but they had key contributors stepping up at big times, and Brian Branch is one of those dudes. The dude's a dog, and he should have been a first-round pick. He was the best safety in the draft. When everybody was like, oh, the Lions aren't going to get him, and I was like, I agree. Like, I don't see him being available on
Right.
picks in the first round. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Somebody's going to take him in the top 15. And he didn't end up going, and he fell where he fell, and it was like, this is a blessing.
Yeah.
And he's now kind of back to full health, it seems like. And he's one of those guys that can be a cornerstone defensively. Not saying he's like the Sauce Gardner level, because he's not. But when you have a guy like that in the second level of your defense with Aiden Hutchinson on the front, it can go a long way. And I think the Jets are kind of in the same boat. And you mentioned, defensively, Sauce Gardner on that second level. You have Jermaine Johnson. You have so many different playmakers up front. I mean, Quinnen Williams. The Jets and the Lions are very similar defensively. I think the Jets obviously are a better defense, but I think with the Lions, the way that they're playing defensively, they bend, they don't break, and they have a lot of the, they're gonna let a team score here and there. They're gonna give up some chunk plays. But when they need a big stop, they find ways to get that stop. And they did that against Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they've done that against a lot of the teams that they've beaten this year. And for a little stretch, they were just dominating from the first quarter through the fourth. So it's refreshing to see. They just, for whatever reason, they struggle with these mobile quarterbacks. And I think a lot of it is because against the Ravens, it was weird. They played a lot of off-man coverage, and they played a big cushion. And that gave guys like OBJ, who cannot get off press because he's an older guy now and he doesn't have that lateral movement skills, but he was able to release freely and he was open all the time. And then they will run their four-man fronts, and they'll take their defensive tackles and kind of just gap them, and then that's it. And they don't really do anything else, and they don't penetrate too deep. They almost like spy with their tackles, but I'm sorry, Aleem McNeil is not going to chase down Lamar Jackson 9 out of 10 times. He might get him once. So I think just overall, though, like the ingredients are there for them to keep getting better. And, if they can find a way to add some pieces the way that the Jets have defensively, man, watch out for the Lions. And I think when you look at the Jets, if they can find a way to figure it out offensively the way the Lions have, man, watch out for the Jets. Like they would be the best team in their division by far. And that's no disrespect to Miami, but I like what the Jets are doing. I really do.
Awesome, man. It's good to hear. It's good to hear. But yeah, I got to ask you about a little bit of what we're talking about already, which is that 2023 draft class, because it reminds me a little bit in terms of impact of the Jets, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson draft class that you just mentioned. That class is looking so good right now. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about them so far?
Yeah, no, I'm feeling, really good. It's one of those where, like I said, I kind of, gave the preview a little bit of just Brian Branch and just what he's been able to do. It's been awesome. I mean, to get these guys, Sam Laporta, it's been really good. Gibbs is, and I will say this, I said this on the Detroit Lions podcast with Scott Bischoff earlier this week, Sam Laporta needs the bye week. The calf injury is definitely real. His lateral movement skills are not there. His ability to really hit those quick outs or dig routes that he's been running all year, it's not there efficiently right now because of that calf injury, I think. But Gibbs has been great, and Gibbs has been somebody that I know the injuries have kind of been somewhat concerning, but he's been great because when he gets the ball, man, is he explosive. And the fact that he looks like a smaller back and he runs through initial contact so well is so impressive. And I think the Lions, once they're able to get through this bye, they get healthy, they get Montgomery and Gibbs really back into that 1-2 role, man, their offense is going to continue to go and continue to grow. I like Jack Campbell. I have his jersey. I'm a supporter of him. I think he's a great fit for what they're going to do long term. Yeah. Right now, in the short term, the results might not necessarily be there, but he's playing more and more each week, and he's getting more comfortable with his role, and they're moving him around. He's playing more defensive end than he has in the past, which is kind of different. Okay. But he does that, I think, or Aaron Glenn does that because of how athletic he is. Like the fact that you can take a guy like that and drop him into the flats coverage or drop him back as a mid-hook, and he can still cover that ground is important. So they're going to let him get after it with the rushing the passer, dropping into coverage. And those have been the top 4 picks. Ultimately, Bradrick Martin, we haven't seen much. Colby Sorstall, we haven't seen much. But there's been enough there to be like, this has been a great draft class. They've got 4 players that can be key pieces for the future. And I love what we've seen so far from this class of Detroit.
Yeah, man. And we talked about on this podcast, Jahmyr Gibbs a while back, kind of discussing the direction of the running back position and how guys like Gibbs, who are really just weapons, right? They're guys you can put them anywhere, just get the ball in their hands, right? They're not really the traditional backs, and a lot of the conversation over the offseason was about, traditional backs being like, well, are we ever going to get paid again? And I feel like it's interesting because I do feel like it's backs like Gibbs who actually are where the league is probably going to start trending towards. Right. But I think what I love the most about the Lions is that that 1-2 punch you mentioned with David Montgomery, because I kind of like the way I've been describing it is like he's kind of the lead back, but like Gibbs is going to get the ball, sometimes as much as him, but
Right.
he's not really the same type of player. Like he's not. It's almost like he's not even playing the same position. But like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's just kind of separate. Yeah.
Right, and Montgomery's one of those guys that's like he's got kind of like the old school mentality, like 3-4 yards, that's it. 3-4 yards, that's it. And he's so efficient between the tackles, and his vision is so much better than I thought it was going to be. Like you watch him with the Bears, and everything was clunky,
Yes.
everything was like behind the line of scrimmage, and he had to make something out of nothing. Now they give him rushing lanes, and he's getting 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 yards per pop, and it's like, man, this guy's actually pretty good. And you can see just from last week how much they missed him
Right.
because they weren't able to get in a flow or in their rhythm because Gibbs can only do so much, and then all of a sudden you're down 14-0, and your whole game plan changes. But when you have Montgomery, your game plan can become, I think, a little bit more consistent, and you can stay true to who you are because of what he does. So, that 1-2 punch is electric. And I'll be honest to Jets fans, I thought Breece Hall and Delvin Cook were going to be kind of a similar 1-2 punch, and it just hasn't been there. And I don't know what the deal is with that. I mean, maybe you can elaborate more on it, but I was expecting more from the run game, and it just hasn't been there for the Jets. But maybe they'll watch a little bit more of what Detroit's doing as far as like the offensive scheme with the zone and gap scheme blocking that the Lions mix and match between, and maybe they can take something away from it and it'll become more efficient.
Yeah, it's been a strange season for Dalvin Cook, honestly. The start was very bad, and it looked like I think a lot of this might have just been him not being ready because of all the like injuries he was working through in the offseason, and then trying to find a new team for that long. But yeah, the start he looked considerably slower. His vision wasn't really there, and then of course the last like 2 weeks he looks faster and his vision's starting to come back. And then of course that's when he's like, okay, I want to play more, so trade me. So it's like it's tough because it seems like he's not like. There are a lot of discussion was like, is he just finished? Is this just it? I think after 2 weeks, a lot of Jets fans were like, yeah, that's it. He's done. But yeah, he started to pop a little bit more. And of course, Breece Hall is, I can't explain Breece Hall, honestly. We weren't really expecting a lot at the beginning of the season. And then he breaks off like a 70-yard run in the first week. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, so he's just back and healthy right now? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and he's running well. I mean, like, through the carries that he's getting like 6 or 7 yards an attempt or something like that. And, he's well over 400 yards rushing. Not bad for 6 games. I mean, like, he's well on pace for over 1,000. So, I mean, I think if they can, again, like I said, if they can find a way to get that 1-2 punch like the Lions have with Gibbs and Montgomery, I think it could do some wonders for one, Breece Hall, but two, just the Jets offense, and maybe it'll get Zach Wilson in rhythm a little bit more too.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that we've talked about a lot about on some of the other pods on the feed is just use play action more, threaten with Breece, because somebody like that who you're like, yeah, any second he can break it off. You're like, yeah, defenses are going to respect that. You can get people cheating up a little bit. So I want to discuss the. One of my favorite players, but also in general, the Lions defensive line, I always talk about the Jets defensive line because I love what they constructed, and Robert Saleh is like a genius, but the Lions defensive line is extremely good, particularly at edge. And you have two of course, Aiden Hutchinson was a lot of people's favorites, but I just really loved the motor he had at Michigan. I think a lot of the conversations about his pass rush plan and his pass rush ability and agility and how many moves does he have in his bag. I think I was kind of like, well, I think the motor actually is going to make up for a lot of this. And it turns out it actually it did, and he added the move, so it's like, well, but him and James Houston, two of my favorite players to watch. James Houston, just because of the flexibility, the ridiculous agility he has. Yeah. How fun has it been to kind of get to see those guys week in, week out?
Yeah, I mean, Houston was huge last year. He had a phenomenal season, like 8.5 sacks. It didn't work out this year. He got hurt in that Seattle game, and Detroit was doing weird stuff with him. Like he was dropping back into coverage and man coverage against Noah Fant. And keep in mind, James Houston ran like a 4.8 40 and no offense,
Right.
a 4-5 guy, legit. And like, I'm not saying that always matters, but it kind of does in those
Yeah.
one-on-one matchups, you know? And I don't know. I wish we could see more from James. I think we might see him later this year, but
Okay.
again, I don't necessarily know. But you're right with Hutch. I mean, he's just so fun, and I'm a little surprised that Hutch was not the first overall pick in that draft. I still am so baffled by it. Trayvon's a fine player. I get it, the upside, the potential, but when you're drafting first overall, don't draft off upside and potential. Draft the sure thing, and Hutch was that guy, man. And
Yep.
they let him go through the cracks, and it's fine. I mean, he's second leading pressure rate right now in the NFL, only behind Max Crosby. He's
Yeah.
consistently getting double teamed and chipped by tight ends, running backs, H backs, and Hutch is just so efficient with his speed to power. Like that is real. And to be
Yes.
6'6", 275, to be as fast off the line of scrimmage, to have the motor that's just nonstop, it's been great. Now he has not had, necessarily the same impact as he did as a rookie as far as the interceptions and all
Right.
that. But I mean, it's still early in the year. He could still finish strong here, maybe against the Raiders, maybe Jimmy G or something does something stupid. But no, it's great. I mean, Aleem McNeil shredded a bunch of weight and got
Yeah.
stronger, got faster. And they've got a rotation. John Kaminsky's fine. They get Romeo Okwara involved.
Hmm.
That's okay. Levi Ozarike, he gets involved.
Yeah.
Um, I like it. I hope they can find another guy. There's been some rumors tied to them with Brian Burns going into the trade deadline.
Whoa.
That would be awesome. I don't see it happening. I think that's more of
Yeah.
a fantasy pipe dream, but it
Yeah.
is what it is. If it happens, sign me up. But
That's electric. Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see, and then we'll get into some 24 draft stuff, I'm sure, on the show, but I would love to see Jared Verse in Detroit with Aiden. I doubt that happens because he's probably a top 10 pick, but
Yeah.
I would love to see another edge rusher opposite of him just to alleviate some of that pressure. And when you have this window of, a quarterback extension and waiting in the wings, a offensive tackle extension, a receiver extension, eventually a Hutchinson extension,
Yeah.
all these things are going to have to come together, but take advantage and get another rookie in here that's explosive and get them on that 5-year rookie deal and just try to take advantage of that for as long as you can. So I'm hoping that's what they do this offseason. But ultimately, yeah, it's been a fine defensive line, and I think it's one of those where Hutch is going to continue to get better and better and better, and I think he's joining that group of top 10 edge rushers in the league.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, as much as people, I always love the conversation around like defensive and offensive line metrics because yeah, they are difficult and somewhat subjective, but like they're real, and it's like it's hard to deny like when a player is dominating,
Yeah.
and like we're seeing Matt Crosby, you could just see it, and Aiden Hutchinson, you can just see it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's crystal clear for sure. Okay, let's get into 2024 draft before we run out of time. So I gotta ask you, what are your early favorites? You mentioned Jared versus one, but are there any other early favorites you have, and maybe some sleepers, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, Olu Fashanu, the offensive tackle, is obviously an early favorite. He's probably a top 10 pick across the board, and maybe even a top 5 player, to the consensus. But we're looking at, a player that's not even 21 yet. He's 6'6", 319. And the first couple things I wrote down about him was power and length. He is so strong and he is so long that I think he's an immediate upgrade for any team that selects him as an offensive tackle. I think he's just so talented. I will say Keon Coleman is easily becoming a number 2 wide receiver on my draft board. Nothing against Malik Neighbors, who's a true deep threat right now. But Keon Coleman has just got the size and that X receiver ability, and those are my types of guys. You go back to T. Higgins, Mike Williams, you go down that Clemson tree of wide receivers, right? Keon Coleman's the same type of dude, and I think at 6'4", 215, he can high point the football. He does so well on contested catches. I love his ability. Another defensive player, Kalen King. We talk about Sauce Gardner coming out of the city of Detroit. King is the same type of player. He came out of Detroit, a very elite athlete. He's probably not as quick-footed as Sauce Gardner and probably not as long as Sauce Gardner, but he's still got one of those playmaking types and closing speed for the position that you just love to see. So I think he's potentially the best corner in this draft. But when I go down kind of the rabbit hole of sleepers, I will say Patrick Paul from Houston was somebody I watched recently, and he's a offensive tackle that has got length, and he's quick for a player his size. I mean, his footwork is really quick. 6'6", 315 is what he's listed as.
Okay.
He's probably more of a day two offensive tackle, but it wouldn't surprise me if a team in the back end of the first round maybe does some digging there. You think back to Josh Jones when he came out of Houston. Yep. Not scouting the helmet, obviously. I'm just kind of making the comparison of a smaller school. And I know Houston's kind of a train wreck. They got really nothing to play for. There's a lot of players probably checked out in that program, but one player, Patrick Paul, is definitely a player to keep names on. Their left guard as well. His name escapes me currently. He's number 60 or number 50. Okay. Man, his name is escaping me, but he's another one. He had a nice snatch trap technique on the game that I watched against Texas. So he's a fun player. But yeah, I mean, those guys are just instantly the players that really stand out for me. Nice. I would be very curious where, some Michigan players go as far as like their tight ends. Loveland is definitely a name to keep tabs on for this tight end group. I know there's teams out there that are obviously looking for tight ends, and with a passing league, you're definitely going to want to keep tabs on tight ends. And Michigan might have, two of the best in the country with who they have. So I would keep tabs on Loveland. He definitely kind of fits that modern day NFL tight end, it seems like, and he had a huge game against Michigan State, which was to be expected. And it pains me to say that, but I would keep tabs on Loveland as well out of Michigan.
That sounds awesome. And Jets fans, take note of all that offensive line. Here, those are a lot of offensive line names. Just write them all down.
Right. Patrick Paul, Olu Fashanu, Joe Alt, Notre Dame. I mean, we can keep going down the list. There's so many. The kid out of Georgia, he got hurt, though. I think he's done for the year. Mims.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think we'll talk about him. I think he'll probably go back, but we'll see.
Right. Look, the Jets need offensive line help. They've needed it for a little bit now. I think the good thing is that right now it's a little consistent, which has helped. But yeah, for sure those names are going to be floating around. Absolutely. So educate yourself, Jets fans, please. I got to ask you about the top wide receivers. We got to see the Kalen King, Marvin Harrison Jr. battle last week. Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't even understand. I can't explain that. But
is he the best player in the draft? I mean, that's an honest question. Like, nothing against Caleb Williams, but for everything that's going on with Caleb, the play is starting to kind of show its true self right now.
Yeah.
Seems like he's figured out. If he's not, improvising or playing off platform, he just kind of looks like a dude. And then, you got the off the field stuff as far as like he wants, I don't know how much truth there is to it, but he wants partial ownership and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, I don't know. So I don't know. You look at Marvin Harrison, instant upgrade to your wide receiver room, instant upgrade to your offense. I think he might be the best player in this draft.
Legit. It's like I was talking about this earlier this week about Joey Porter Jr., where it's like you can scout genetics. That is a legitimate real thing. But like with Marvin Harrison Jr., it's like, man, it's another level. It's like, yes, I've learned everything from my Hall of Fame father, but also I'm bigger, stronger, faster. Like I'm the prototype wide receiver on top of all of the mental parts of the game.
Yeah, and his movement and his routes as a player that size. I mean, he's the same size as Keon Coleman, and he's more fluid and flexible with his route running ability and change of direction ability over just about any receiver in this draft. And it's just like, that's just so unheard of. And I think back to that draft of like Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb and those types of dudes, and I'm like, man, like those guys were legit. And those were some of the best receivers I remember scouting throughout the 10, 11 years of doing this. And then I'm like looking at it now and I'm like, man, Marvin Harrison blows those guys away. Like he is so good.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the scary part because, you mentioned Keon Coleman earlier. Like he's so good, and in any other class, it's like, oh man, this guy's probably wide receiver one. Like he's doing everything you want him to do. He's even like returning punts because he's like, I got to show you I'm agile too. Like I'm gonna like break 8 tackles and like take a punt return back. And then he like looks back and it's like, yeah, no, Marvin Harrison Jr. is still wide receiver one. It's wild. It's gonna be a great class. It seems like.
Yeah, and I will say, his counterpart Marvin Harrison, Emeka Agbuka,
Yes.
if I'm saying that right, he's talented, but he's just kind of fallen under the radar a little bit and kind of
Right.
fallen through through the weeds here. And you look at some of the players around him. We mentioned Coleman, Malik Neighbors, Romo Dunza or Dunze,
Yes.
Xavier Worthy. Shout out my guy Damian Parson. He's been all on Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina. So I think there's just so many different names. Emeka just kind of has fallen. I think a lot of it's because
Yeah.
he's been banged up. And some of the bad quarterback play at Ohio State, it just has not been as consistent in recent years, is kind of hurting him a little bit. So,
It's true.
yeah, I mean, overall, it's a great wide receiver class, and it's really pick your flavor after Marvin Harrison Sr. Or Junior,
Yeah.
excuse me. You get to, again, Neighbors, Coleman, whoever, pick your flavor, man. What do you need, because you can find it
Exactly.
with all of these dudes.
Yeah. I think it's probably gonna be one of those drafts where a team that's like, oh, we didn't think we needed a wide receiver coming into the draft, but it's like, well, look who's here. Like you'll get to your point in the draft, and it's like, nah, I got to take him.
Yeah, and we haven't
You
even
just
gotten
gotta
into
upgrade.
Johnny Wilson from Florida State.
That's right.
The teammate of Keon Coleman. I mean, this guy's
Yeah.
like 6'7", like 240. I don't know if he's a future tight end or what, but the dude is massive, and he's like, he goes up and gets it. He's a pretty good route runner. Like, I like the skill set of Johnny Wilson, and I wonder if he's one of those guys that, because of just the height, weight, speed, does he end up going much sooner, and nobody's really talking about him either right now? Like,
Right.
you know how those go when the combine goes around.
Exactly. Yeah. I do love the right before we close. I got I got to ask you about this, because this, for me, I feel like was a funny moment, because the whole like DK Metcalf conversation when he was like when his class was coming about and he went to the combine, like pre-combine it's like, I don't think he's as good as we thought he was. Post combine it's like, wait, hold on. And then because it's like, wait, all these numbers don't make any sense.
Right.
And then, of course the team's going to be like, yeah, no, I'm going to take a chance on that. And like, it kind of works out. So like, yeah, you're right. Like a lot of these players they're going to get to the combine. They're going to do something wild, because I don't know what they're feeding to kids these days, but there's some insane athletes out there.
Dude, they're eating something. I don't know, but they're so freakish. It is crazy. Like, even just my son's level. Like, there's a kid we played this past weekend. He's probably 6 foot, $170, and he's just yoked, and he's 13 years old. And I'm like, what? Or how am I going to defend this? Like,
13, 6 foot, 7.
it's crazy, man. These kids are crazy.
That's wild. It's wild.
Crazy.
Man, that's the thing though, like as things progress, and that's like why I love to talk about this stuff on this podcast, man, because as things progress, the time goes along, the game just keeps changing and keeps like everything just keeps shifting. You got to keep up, and the teams that keep up are always the teams that make the big jumps. So I hope the Lions and the Jets keep up, man. So
Yeah.
let's hope for a big year and a big draft after that.
Yeah, I hope so, man. And I hope both teams are, when we get into January, are playing an extra game or two of football, just because
Yes, sir.
why not? I mean, it would be awesome to see Aaron Rodgers come back for the playoffs. I mean, it would be something that you would only write in the NFL, right? I mean, everybody says it's scripted. I don't know if that's true or not, but it would be certainly a storyline that, if let's say they're playing the Bills or the Dolphins in the first round and they got Aaron Rodgers coming out and they somehow, beat them. That would be sweet. That would be awesome to see.
It would be. Look, if Aaron Rodgers comes back, I'll just say that we're going to be playing pretty late in the postseason. Honestly, all I'm hoping for, I just want a Jets Lions Super Bowl. That's all I want.
That'd be awesome. Either team in the Super Bowl would be awesome.
It really would. It really would.
Nobody has gone through more or through worse stuff than us. I mean, we have gone through it all.
I feel like there's like matches for every moment. Like the Dan Orlovsky stepping out of the back of the end zone, Mark Sanchez butt fumble.
Yeah,
there's
right.
there's a match for every moment.
Yeah,
We've been through a lot, man.
Yeah.
We deserve this.
Exactly.
I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me.
I got to try to get you back on at a future date, but let me get you back to the rest of your Saturday as we get ready for college football, so we can do some scouting. But But thank you for coming on. Please, y'all, follow Russ at Russ NFL Draft. A really easy handle. Also super clutch. Congrats on getting that one.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.